What evil prank have you pulled off? Mom can't tolerate sweet things. Since she can remember, she never ate sweets. When I was 6 or so, during breakfast, Mom left her newly brewed coffee on the table. My older brother encouraged me to put more sugar as a prank. So I did. Mom came back, stirred and drank, and spit out a rocket. We started laughing, saying it was a prank, explaining that we put extra sugar in it. She looked at us as if we were stupid. Apparently I put salt instead. Her coffee was at sea salt level. Edit. Welp. Got my very first silver and a second silver. Thank you kindly strangers. This might stupidly be the funniest comment in the thread. My coworkers in the Chicago office asked me to bring back a phone book and the hotel stationery from my business trip to Kansas City. They were preparing for another coworker's bachelor party for the night before the wedding. The groom was known for drinking to an extent that was considered legendary. After a night of drinking, he woke up on the morning of his wedding in a hotel room. He checked the nightstand and found the Kansas City phone book. The desk was stocked with KC stationery. His friends had clued the front desk staff in on what was happening and convinced them to answer his room phone good morning and welcome to the Kansas City Holiday Inn. It was 5 hours till the wedding, and he was actually only a couple miles from the venue. But the freakout was epic. This is sublime. I have an extra mouse in my desk drawer at work. I have the USB plugged into the docking station of the obnoxious guy a couple cubes away. On days he is particularly obnoxious, I will take out the extra mouse and move it around every few minutes. He has never realized, because it's plugged into the docking station and not his laptop. He has even had the laptop replaced. Never noticed. It brings me to tears silently laughing sometimes. I have to be careful not to overdo it. AHH the old wireless mouse. Nice work. I've posted this before, but I made a friend believe she was being followed by a garden gnome. For years. Many of her friends are involved plus other helpers. She shows up at a B&B in Scotland that we'd recommended, and there was a gnome in the garden, and it looked exactly like the gnome that had briefly turned up in her yard. Then she saw it on her way to work, then in Provence and Germany. It really did look like the same gnome. It was. This kills the crab. Gradually over the course of 2 weeks moved my coworker's monitors closer to the front edge of the desk, like 1/4 foot per move, until they were so close the keyboard barely fit. Stupid small desk, she grumbled. Near the end, I then moved them back, just as slowly, over a few weeks. She never caught on. Michael. Oh, that's funny, Michael. I used to work for a cruise line. A buttonger asked if the crew lives on the ship full time. I and my co-worker explained that no, the crew leaves every night to fly back to Miami and then returns each morning. She walked away satisfied. After that cruise was over, our manager was sharing the buttonger evaluations with us and was confused about one in particular. It was a woman who had stayed on deck 14 and had complained that she couldn't sleep at night because of the noise of the crew helicopter. Fact 1. 200 crew do not leave every night, but do live on the ship. Fact 2. That ship didn't even have a helipad. Question. WTF was she hearing every night? Someone in the next cabin using helicopter sounds as ambient noise to sleep. Edit. Someone was impressed enough to give me a silver for this. Thanks, human. I have peaked now. It's all downhill from here. 48 minutes of soothing, relaxing, meditating Vietnam War sounds for studying and thinking. People in school used to always take my Gatorade. So I took an empty bottle, filled it with dyed salt water, and let them take my drink. Not gonna lie, it was hilarious watching one person to spit salt water in the middle of but only for their unbelieving friend to do the same. They just take your Gatorade, #BULLIES. Picked out every last marshmallow from my sister's box of Lucky Charms, then took a photo of me eating a bowl of Just Charms, printed it, and put in the bottom of the bag. I then sealed the bag back up, hot glued the box, and back in the pantry it went. This isn't a prank, this is the work of Satan. It's tragically delicious. I lived in Korea for a bit. When my mom came to visit, I told my Korean girlfriend it was an American custom to greet older women by touching elbows. I told my mom the same story about Korean customs. It was a thing of beauty. They were not pleased. In India we touch the feet of our elders to get their blessings. I wonder if someone is pranking us since the last 5,000 years. That cheeky Mathurdaka. If Hindus reincarnate, chances are he pranked himself. Over a decade ago I worked in the warehouse of a guitar center. We dealt with inventory, shipping and receiving. We had a dumpster behind the store in a shared parking lot that people would leave random things in, even though it was not a public dumpster. One day we found a broken beach chair in an open cardboard box. The box had a shipping label on it. It was left in such a way that it was easy to assume that the chair/box combo was left by the same person. We packed the beach chair in another box and shipped it back to the customer. I wish I was there to see the person's face when they received their trash back via UPS. Haha, I did something similar, but nowhere near this epic. There is a used bookstore that I go to sometimes. This bookstore sells used postcards. I bought a few that had been previously sent 20 to 30 years prior. I then slapped a fresh stamp on them and tossed them into the mailbox. I wish I could have seen the people's reaction when they showed up. It's all fun and games until you get a postcard from someone who's been dead for a decade and you freak the duck out. I worked at a fast food where the boss was too cheap to get hack installed. In the super hot summer days we would all sweat so much that we could wring sweat out of our uniforms. There was this boy who I had a love-hate relationship with. We would always prank each other, but mine were always tame. Until one day, he left his drink in the back while he was flipping burgers. I grabbed a Vinegar packet, cut open a corner, and put a straw directly into it, and exchanged it with the straw from his drink. Moments later, I was in the front of the store, and I heard him spit and scream my name while calling me a B***TCH. He still high-fived me. That's a good friend. The high five showed you he appreciated the prank and there were no hard feelings. I'm sure you were on guard for quite a while after that though. One night I replaced every framed object in my boss's office with a picture of me making a stern face. Posters, certificates, photos, etc. Took like 3 hours because he had like 30 framed things in his office. The next day I made sure I was out doing field work to make him sit with it most of the day. He had a lot of foot traffic to look at his office that day. I worked in an office that had 4 offices with shared partitions that had Gilbert at the top. My neighbor wasn't the most observant person and kind of a duck. So I started printing random pictures like Nicolas Cage and setting them on my side of the office facing into his. He never noticed. It got to the point where everyone else in the office would check what photo I had set that week, but he never caught on. He knew. He just pulled a Stanley and collected his paycheck. My mum's laptop wallpaper was a picture of her granddaughter. I copied the picture 100 times and made her wallpaper a slideshow of the same picture over and over again. So the file would change but nothing would change visibly on the monitor. The pictures would change every 10 seconds. On one of the images I painted a tiny little curly mustache on her. So randomly for 10 seconds my niece would have a mustache. My mum thought she was either losing her mind or had a computer virus, and every time the mustache popped up, it was gone by the time she tried to show anyone. I did something similar to a college friend. I replaced a single system sound file, the click for the mouse, with a 5-minute version. It started off identical, followed by 4 minutes and 50 seconds of silence, but at the end, it had me screaming. Now if another system sound would play, it stopped playing the previous sound. So he would use his computer, and then when he would walk away, it might scream 5 minutes later. This is incredible. I'm trying really hard not to burst out laughing and wake up my girlfriend. You have to tell us what happened. Did he twig the first time it happened and come straight to you? I remember it like it was yesterday. At summer camp my cabin's leaders found a little snake that wasn't doing so well, so they decided to put it in an old terrarium in our cabin. A few of the guys were nervous about it. So the next day, when the leaders decided the snake was well enough to release, I asked that they keep quiet about releasing it. When the other guys got back to the cabin and found no snake in the terrarium, chaos ensued. I thought my mom was cool with me having a pet snake. We went weeks without issue. So one night I'm letting it lay on my stomach while I watched TV, and at some point he decided to drop down and check out underneath the couch. His name was Breakfast. Kids are weird, and I say oh man. Breakfast is under the couch. My mom was sitting maybe 15 feet away in our little office space, and she jumps up on the desk chair and starts screaming about the loose snake. Breakfast wasn't allowed out for TV time much after that. My mom had the same reaction to my noodle. I told her before I went on a week vacation that I was buying a snake when I came home. True to my word, I showed up with a pet snake after the trip. My mom was okay with him as long as she doesn't have to go near him. She would stand on the opposite side of the room until she realized ball pythons are literally the most docile snakes ever. I have gotten her to try and feed him a few times with my dad's help. Apparently she speaks to him saying, "Here noodles. Want a yummy mouse? I have mouse for you. Noodless." I have also gotten her to hold his tail. But if he looks back at her, bets are off and she's back across the room lol. I don't know why she said it was okay for me to get him. I have noodles and a hog nose now. She thinks the hoggy is cuter, but hates her more because of the attitude. Not a prank I pulled off, but one I was victim to. My manager had left me in charge of the store when I was 16. Not legal, but that's a whole other mess. For a whole weekend. Saturday went well, and I was happy with how I went. Although my paranoid brain is always concerned about whether or not doors are actually locked. I'm the same with my house. But the store was worse. So I make my dad drive down to the store to double check that everything is okay. 15 minutes later I get a phone call from him saying, "Manager and the police are here because the door was unlocked and people were inside." Cue to me on the floor in tears hyperventilating, while my dad is telling my mum, who had since picked up the phone, that he was only kidding and that everything was fine. How to induce a panic attack 101. 1 year. My sister had to move back into my parents' house. I was like 15. She was a little older, mid-20s. April Fool's comes, and I know my sister woke up at like 6 AM. So I took out the light in the kitchen, put Vaseline all on the refrigerator handle, and put a rubber band around the water gun on the sink. I waited for her to go in the kitchen. I was in my room pretending to be asleep, and all I heard was shut, followed by a shut, followed by her screaming my name, and waking up my parents. My parents were not happy. Floor was soaked with water, and it woke both of them up. Do it again though. Edit, water gun thing. There is a small little black sprayer to the right of the sink. You pull it out. It has a hose connected to it, and you can spray down dishes and such. I did that, but I did it with black electrical tape, and then promptly forgot about it. Cue the next morning at 8 AM, when my stepfather tried to use the sink, and got blasted in the face with cold water. Peeled the tape off and didn't say a word about it. I expected him to blow up, but he didn't. Welded a co-worker's boot to the floor. He had worn out the toe caps on his steel-toed boots while he was making a weld kneeling inside a large piece of equipment on steel. I put a small tack weld on his boot, so he had trouble breaking it loose and getting up. OSHA would like to know your location. OSHA would about die if they knew the degree to which industrial workers duck with each other. I watched a senior mechanic pour water down an operator's plumber's crack while he was in the cute admin's office, on the phone with ours for a paperwork issue. Operator got him back by putting about a dozen large zip ties on the driver shaft of mechanic's truck and leaving some rocks in his toolbox. I was 9. My dad just had hernia surgery the day prior and was recuperating on the couch. Before I left for school, I put the Martha Stewart channel on and left the remote just beyond his reach. He spent 8 hours learning how to arrange pillows on a bed. He exacted his revenge 15 years later. Ed just had my emergency C-section, and he put Frozen on and left it on a loop while the entire family left for the mall and left the remote just out of my reach. Revenge is indeed a dish best served cold. Wow, he really didn't let it go after all those years. One that was played on me. I took my SATs, college entrance exams, for those outside the US, on April 1st. Should have known right. But apparently, I'm not that smart. That night I went out with a group of friends. And when I got home my mom met me with a serious look on her face. She told me that the testing committee had called, that there had been an error and all test papers from that day were lost. Everyone was being contacted to schedule a date to retake the exam. She totally sold it. Face, reactions, everything. I bought it hook, line, and sinker, and she let me believe it until lunchtime the next day. My mom is a diabolical person. The fact that she'll let you believe it until the next day is evil lol. The only way to top that would be to fake a pregnancy and not tell her until after lunch the next day. Early days of networked PCs, DOS and NetWare. I worked in a computer lab on campus. There weren't a lot of management utilities available at the time, so I, and a few other student employees, wrote batch scripts and small programs to automate a few things when a student or professor would log onto the network. Having that sort of access led to numerous pranks being pulled, but most of us were savvy enough to figure it out and undo the prank. However, we had two coworkers who liked to loaf a bit too much for our liking. They were not at all technical and had taken the lab assistant job because they thought it was easy money. They had conspired to be buttocked into a remote bathroom lab that rarely had any students in it who would need assistance for most of their working hours. They would just sit around and play games on the PCs while the rest of us were, working. Clearly this could not stand. I rewrote a piece of code that was executed when every single user signed on. If the username was either one of these two, and they were signing in on a PC in that remote bathroom, and it was during their working hours, it would look at an innocuous file on the network. The file merely had a few bytes in it which noted how long it had been since this prank had last been triggered, ensuring that it would run once or twice a week maximum. If it did activate, it would launch a terminate and stay resident program which would wait a random time between 5 to 15 minutes and then drop an image of 2 dudes 69ing on the monitor for a few seconds and reboot the PC. Tested it, put the compiled program in place, and deleted the source. Much hilarity ensued for the next 2 semesters. Edit. Well, this seems to have struck a chord with more than a few. Here's an interesting bit that I did not share initially. This was the late 80s early 90s and decent online PRN, much less gay PRN, didn't really exist, think ASCII art. So where did I find this image to use? One day I, and a few of the other student workers, were playing around with a new disk utility that helped visualize where space was being used, an important thing in the days of 20 megabytes hard drives. We had meant to use it to see where some of our network storage had gone, but the utility scanned all the drives on a PC including the networked ones. At the time, as fate would have it, sitting in the CD-ROM drive was a Boland Turbo C installation disk. It popped up in the final report as having a single hidden directory, labeled XXX of all things, that contained more data than the entirety of the Turbo C installation combined. It was all PRN, and in high resolution 640x480 VGA glory to boot. A hidden folder containing nothing but movie graphy had somehow managed to be included on Boland's CD-ROM that had been purchased by thousands of businesses and educational institutions. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you want more videos, don't forget to like and subscribe. You are helping me a lot. Thanks again.